It may seem like Apple is behind the competition a lot of the time. The company appeared to be slow to developments like widgets, bezel-less displays with camera notches and screens with high refresh rates. And with the iPhone 16 Pro, it appears to once again be late to the party, bringing generative AI features and a real button for the camera to its 2024 flagship. But if you will allow me to play therapist for a moment, I think it's not that Apple is slow, I think Apple is cautious, perhaps overly so. Caution on its own isn't a bad trait, in fact, it could be considered thoughtful rather than rushed to the cutting edge with its peers. Apple delivers, usually finding a slightly different approach that is often an improvement on what's out there. Just look at the Vision Pro headset or Apple Silicon, or even the iPod, the iPad, and the AirPods, which were far from the first of their kind when they launched. With the iPhone 16 Pro, the focus is on cameras and Apple Intelligence. The problem is Apple Intelligence isn't quite here yet. We can test some features in the developer beta that's currently available, but that's not necessarily the same as the experience the public will get when the update rolls out in October. It's not unprecedented for new iPhones to launch without some marquee features, sure, and thankfully there is still plenty that the iPhone 16 Pro brings. From camera control, the Fusion camera, and other video related updates to slightly bigger displays and iOS 18, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are intriguing successors, even absent the wanted intelligence features that are still to come. Arguably, the biggest change to the iPhone 16 lineup, not to mention the iPhone 16 Pro, is the introduction of camera control. This is a button on the right side of the device which has touch and pressure sensors on it to enable greater control with swipes and semi-presses. One of the things this was supposed to do was let you push slightly on the button to trigger focus, similar to what half pressing a DSLR shutter button would do. That function won't be available at launch, so I can't say if it's effective. But by the large, camera control is a very Apple approach to a feature that has been around for years. From phones by Sony and Nokia with dedicated shutter buttons to Android handsets with hardware-based double-click shortcut, the notion of quick access to your camera without having to fudge with the screen is a popular one. For good reason too. I've hated having to swipe or long press the icon on my iPhone's lock screen in the past, and even though I could set the iPhone 15 Pro section button to open the camera, it just wasn't positioned well and I'd have to give up my mute button. So, Apple isn't breaking new ground with its hardware shortcut for a frequently used app, but it does do a few things differently. With the touch sensor, you can swipe on it to tweak things like exposure, zoom levels, and tone, and the half press still works as a way to select options or go back out of menus within the camera control interface. In theory, it's a nice way to make changes in the fly. In reality, there are a few issues and they largely have to do with placement. The button sits a little further from the base of the phone than I'd like, so my fingers have to reach a bit more to press it, whether I was in landscape or portrait mode. This wasn't usually a problem when I had both hands free and could steady the iPhone with my other hand and readjust my grip. But if you are trying to take a quick shot with just one hand, the button's location can feel unintuitive. Of course, everyone has different finger lengths and ratios, so it's entirely possible that other people find this logical. It also depends on your grip. If you are cradling the bottom of the device in your palm, it's harder to maneuver. If you are covering part of the screen and reaching out for the button head on, it's slightly easier to use camera control. Still, even for those with the strongest claws, swiping and half pressing and double half pressing on the sensor is tricky. I was only ever really able to do that if I had my thumb holding up on the bottom edge and my middle ring and little fingers steadying the right end of the phone. Maybe this is a new camera grip I just need to relearn for this button. The awkward placement is a minor gripe compared to what I found most annoying, the button's touch sensor. Not only was it difficult to swipe through different settings when holding the device with one hand, it also reacts to accidental touches and swipes. Sometimes the phone would slide down my palm and change the exposure or zoom level, completely ruining the vibe. I should point out that you can go into accessibility settings to either tweak or swipe sensitivity or turn it off altogether if it really bothers you. Honestly, if you are planning on making adjustments with camera control, it's best to have time, patience, and both hands free. In those situations, I had a lot of fun editing settings and watching them by reflected in the viewfinder in real time. I also liked zooming in and out of subjects, decomposing a shot, and tweaking exposure till I liked what I saw before then pushing down to snap the picture. I especially loved this while recording video since it makes slowly zooming in or out of a subject smoother than using the on-screen slider. Even if you are not a glutton for buttons, there are still some camera updates that might intrigue you. This year's flagships sport what Apple calls a 48 megapixel fusion camera, which has a faster quad pixel sensor. This enables what the company describes as zero shutter lag, which is wording it has used repeatedly over the years. In this case, it's referring to how quickly the camera will capture a shot after you press the shutter button. I will admit I was initially confused by this update in part because it requires relearning some behaviors I had adopted to mitigate the shortfalls of older cameras. Basically, the iPhone 16 Pro's cameras are now so fast that when I asked someone to throw something so I could capture it in motion to see how still the images were, my shots ended up being of the person holding the object. Our video producer and I were very confused, and it wasn't until the zero shutter lag concept was explained clearer to me that I got it. I had become used to pressing the shutter early since cameras, in my experience, would be fractions of a second slow. Apple has become so fast that it actually captured the literal moment I tapped the button instead of the split second after when the object was in mid-air. Depending on your mood, the new photographic styles can be fun or serious. Apple's tweaked the built-in camera filters to not only offer more options but give you greater control. Due to how the company has refined its processing each year, there is also an improved depth map captured when it detects a face in the scene. This, combined with a greater focus on color science around skin tone, has led to what might be my favorite new iPhone 16 feature. Whether I shot them in portrait mode or not, photos of people what I took using the iPhone 16 Pro were a dream to edit. Simply switching between the standard, natural, luminous, quiet, or ethereal styles already resulted in improvements to be colors and shadows, but I could also tap on each thumbnail to across the new editing touchpad and drag a dot around. This let me more precisely tweak the hues and contrast levels, and an additional slider below let me adjust how warm the image was. It's been about 2 months since the public beta for iOS 18 was released, and it was nice to get a taste of upcoming features like the new customizable home pages, expanded tap-back reactions, and the redesigned Photos app. With the iPhone 16 launch, iOS 18 is basically ready for prime time with some caveats. This year, more than ever, it's hard to figure out what's coming to your iPhone and what isn't. With the release of Apple Intelligence slated for October, features like writing tools, cleanup for photos, and the redesigned Siri won't be ready till next month, and even then, your non-Pro iPhone 15 won't be compatible. Plus, some features that were teased at WWDC like Genmoji still haven't been added to the iOS 18.1 developer beta, which is where most Apple Intelligence features have been arriving as a preview for app makers. Within the iPhone 16 lineup too, there are things coming only to the Pro models like multi-layer recording in voice memos. It's confusing and can make choosing your iPhone a trickier decision, but for this review at least, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are getting everything. I cannot wait to try out multi-track recording in voice memos, and I hope Apple sees this yearning as a sign that it should bring this to more devices. It was nice to get time with iOS 18 even in the absence of Apple Intelligence. Honestly, I'm not even sure I'd like those features that much. In a similar way, Gemini AI was nice on Pixel 9 Pro series but didn't feel like must-haves. Some of the new iOS 18 touches I noticed immediately are the refreshed control center, which took some getting used to as I had to relearn how to swipe back to the home page since there are more pages to scroll through now. I especially enjoyed seeing the new little chat bubble appears on my voice recordings, indicating that a transcript had been generated for them, and though I haven't exchanged messages with Android toting friends yet, I'm glad to see RCS support is finally live this week. Though I was excited for the new custom routes tool in Maps, I struggle to actually create them. You can set your start and end points and have the app close the loop for you, or just tap landmarks or points on the map to get the route to basically connect the dots. Unfortunately, no matter how many times I tried to get the route to cut through a building where I knew a pedestrian walkway existed, Maps reinstated me at every turn, forcing the route to go through more established paths instead. It's not unreasonable, but certainly not the open world route creation feature I was envisioning. The best thing about iOS 18 and also some new features in the iPhone 16 lineup is the customizability. I do appreciate that if you don't like something, you can usually turn it off. With the new ability to place apps outside of a rigid grid, you can now lay your home screen out just the way you like. The redesigned Photos app lets you create and pin collections so you can more easily find the pictures most important to you. And again, I'm glad Apple is giving people the option to turn off camera control altogether or adjust its sensitivity. The iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are powered by Apple's A18 Pro chip, which are built on second generation 3nm technology and a new architecture with smaller, faster transistors. All this is meant to deliver unprecedented efficiency according to Apple's press release. Some small software glitches aside, I have never run into slowdown on the iPhone 16 Pro, but I was certainly surprised by the smaller handset's battery life. In general, the iPhone 16 Pro would barely last a full day, which is reminiscent of the iPhone 15 Pro too. It's worth noting that before this review, I was primarily using an iPhone 15 Pro Max as my daily driver, which usually gets through a day and a half with no problem, so the drop in endurance is even more pronounced for me. Most days, I'd pick up the iPhone 16 Pro at about 9 am and would get to about 9 pm before getting low battery alerts. If I started the day a bit later, closer to 11 am, for instance, I got to 1 am before the iPhone 16 Pro ran completely dry. On Sunday, I unplugged the iPhone at about 9:30 am and was shocked on the train home to get a warning that remaining power was at just 20%. It was only 6:50 pm and the night had barely just started. You'll significantly better battery life on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which delivers the same almost 2-day runtime as its predecessor. And sure, a phone with a smaller battery not lasting as long makes mathematical sense, but considering the Pixel 9 Pro is a comparably sized handset and manages to last about 2 days, there's no excuse for the iPhone 16 Pro to conk out before the night is up. One of the best things about the iPhone 16 Pro lineup is that unlike last year, there isn't much of a trade-off in cameras if you opt for the smaller device. The iPhone 15 Pro Max had a 5x telephoto zoom camera, and while the iPhone 15 Pro only went up to 3x. As a budding photographer of skittish wild animals, I opted for the Max, especially since it was much lighter than its predecessors thanks to the titanium build. With the iPhone 16 Pro having essentially the same camera system as the Pro Max, I thought it was time for me to go back to a size that was much easier on my hands. Alas, with the disappointing battery performance, I might just have to stick with the Max, and you might too. There is also the non-Pro iPhone 16 models to consider, and just as there are fewer differences than ever between the Pro and Pro Max, the trade-offs aren't as significant this year either. Apple brought the previously Pro exclusive action button on the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, while also including the camera control on its less premium phones. The main things that set the two lines apart this year are processors, screen quality, camera sensors, and onboard mics. You will lose support for Pro RAW photos and multi-layer recording by opting for the cheaper devices too. Otherwise, you will still have all the iOS 18 and Apple Intelligence features coming to the Pros, as well as spatial audio recording, which enables the audio mix I described in the camera section earlier. Apple's caution is sometimes warranted, especially at a time when mistrust of AI-generated content runs rampant. The company taking its time to get Apple Intelligence right is understandable, but its deliberation doesn't always lead to winners. While I appreciate the attempt to differentiate camera control with the touch sensor for more versatility, I am not yet convinced on its usefulness. The good news is, and I cannot stress this enough, you have the option to tune it to your liking, and that's the theme I'm seeing in recent Apple features that hint at more thoughtfulness than usual. If you don't like something, or if something isn't right for your needs, you can adjust or disable it. In iOS 18, you have greater control over your home screen's app layout and can pin custom collections for easier reach. In the Photos app, the action button introduced last year could have been a spectacular fail had Apple not let you still keep it as a mute switch, but it managed to give people more functionality while maintaining the status quo for those who are just as resistant to change. Change is scary, change is hard, but without change there is no progress. Apple's cautious approach is a tricky balancing act that's evident on the iPhone 16 Pro. Some new features like audio mix and custom routes in Maps delivers mixed results, otherwise like photography styles are hits. Then there are the basic ingredients like good battery life and durable, attractive designs that Apple cannot neglect. The iPhone 16 Pro's subpar battery life holds it back from beating the competition, which is stiffer than ever this year, especially from Google. Luckily for Apple, most people who have iPhones are going to stick with iPhones. It's just easier. For those already sucked into the ecosystem, the iPhone 16 Pro are worth the upgrade from a model that's at least 2 years old. If you already have an iPhone 15 Pro, for the sake of our planet and your wallet, you might prefer to hold off on upgrading, especially since this year's devices aren't that much different.